Hey there, so this video is to go through the snap-in gun weapon system. Everything from adding it to your existing project, explaining what all of the components do and what all the variables do and so on. If there's anything you want to see specifically that you want to just skip to, check the description for an index of what is contained in this video. When you first launch a project, you're going to see this. You're going to have just a sample guide that kind of runs hilarious here. You can pick up the various weapons that are in here. First one's a pistol, and I have it set to do traces instead of projectiles, just as a test with, so you can see that traces here. And I hit wood. You can hear wood if I hit the metal. You can hear the metal, and I have it set to be able to go through 2 pieces of wood, but it can't go through metal, so it stops there. Okay, so we'll talk about these various surface types and how you can add them and modify them and change them and so on. So you can use projectiles or traces for any gun that you want. It's up to you. It depends on the style of game you're going for, or fast-paced or more arcadey style, like maybe CSGO. You might want to use line traces. For something more realistic, you might want to use projectiles. Then you can control the speed of them, gravity and that kind of stuff. So it's up to you. Any gun can use either one, so you just have to put the check mark on or off. So these are using projectiles. You can see when I hit the other characters, if I hit them in the chest, it takes more shots. If I hit them in the head, so you can control what bones do what types of damage, what critical chance each one has, and so on and so on. So we'll go through how to set that up. These types of projectiles, which are bouncy or explosives. So this is a grenade launcher. So that's included as well. You can change the various settings, how bouncy they are, how many bounces it takes before they explode, how many seconds can go by before they explode. Also a rocket launcher, so you can change the speed of the projectile, what the actual mesh of the projectile looks like. So it's a hilarious little rocket that flies through the air, but that's what the system is for. It's creating these types of guns, and you can also add burst fire and automatic fire. It's already included, so burst, automatic, and single shot. So you can see this is burst. If I hit B, and hit B again, and you get single. Okay, so you can add those to any guns you want as well. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to migrate this to an existing project, just to show how that would be done, because this assumes that you probably already have your own characters, you probably already have your own game started, and now you want to add a shooting component to it. I'm going to add it to the third-person epic template, which isn't ideal because it just comes with a running guide. It doesn't actually come with somebody that has a gun or anything like that, or no animations for that. If you want to see what it looks like, obviously just load up this demo right here and hit play, and you'll see what it looks like with proper animations and that. But already have your own pickup logic and inventory system as well. This system includes a basic version of pickup and drop, as you just saw in the demo here. I wouldn't really use it for production. It's not that featureful. You're more than welcome to use it and expand on it, but as is, it's kind of basic. You have to pick up a weapon, you can't drop it, you can only pick up another weapon, it automatically drops and so on. So it's just there for demo purposes because the main system is for the shooting, the impacts and all that kind of stuff. It's not for, it's not an inventory system, it's not a pickup and drop system. We're going to include it though because it is included in the system, and we're going to include it in the TPS project because that doesn't have a pickup and drop system. So last thing I want to mention here is if you go into the version_help folder, you'll see that there's a instructions right up here. So if you don't want to use the video, or if you're stuck and you can't use a video or something, the instructions are written out here how to implement it. Looks a lot longer than it is. There's some special instructions if you use the snap-in inventory system that you can integrate with it there. But the very first thing we want to do before we migrate the project, is go into the project we're migrating to. This will be my third-person project here. It's just a basic right now. We want to add 2 collisions, 2 new collisions that don't exist already. Okay, so one's a collision, and then one's a trace channel. Okay, so we want to add SI bullet and SI shot. Okay, so that's what we're going to do first. And you want to do that first because if you do it later, after you've migrated the project, all of the collisions that are set in the current gun project will get set to a default, which is probably world dynamic, and then you'd have to go through and change the collision of the bullets and all that kind of stuff, and it's just a pain. So if you do it ahead of time, then you don't have to modify anything. So let's go to project settings. On the left, go to collision, new object channel, and we're going to call this SI_bullet. And you want to make sure the default response is overlap. Okay, let's hit accept. And just below that, new trace. Again, SI_, and this time just use shot. And the default response is overlap. Okay, hit accept, and that's all you want to do for that. Okay, and the other thing we're going to do is if we go into our character, so whatever character you're using, you want to go into your character, click on the mesh. We just want to make sure that it's overlapping the shots and not ignoring them. And the other thing is right here where it says generate overlap events, make sure that is true. Okay, so that's how our bullets are going to know what bone they hit on the mesh. But what we want to do is make sure the capsule component here isn't blocking our shots, right? Because we want to make sure it hits the mesh in the proper spots. Because if you get a headshot and it gets stopped here, it's like you have an invisible force field around you all the time. So go here, and where it says pawn, just change that to custom, and then set SI shot to ignore, and SI bullet to ignore. That way it'll let the bullets come through the capsule, but it'll still hit the mesh. Okay, and just compile that. And then go back to the mesh here, and at the very top, type tag, and we want to add 2 tags. And the first one we're going to add is player mesh, all one word. And that's so anytime we try to search this actor for a mesh, if we ever try to look for it, if we want to determine the player's mesh, so if we want to look for a socket or something like that, you might have multiple meshes in here, and if we search for all the meshes and we find the first one, we want to make sure that the one we actually use is the one that's our player mesh. And the other one we want to put here is what type of impact is it going to do when the bullet hits this mesh? And in this particular case, it's going to be flesh, spelled properly. If I change this to concrete, and I have a concrete surface, then you're going to see concrete impact just come off this guy, and that's not going to make sense unless it's a giant rock column or something. So we're just going to change that to flesh. Okay, save that, and then now we should be good to migrate our project over. Our SI components here, we want to migrate the SI GWS component, and you're by default going to get the handy macros component with it. This is version 003. It's 003 at the time of this video, and in the gun weapon system, the handy macros will not get updated past that version. It is just included because a lot of them were used in the project. So, okay, so right click, migrate, put in the content folder of whatever project you're migrating to. Okay, and then once that's done, you can close the gun weapon system, and we can see there's a snap-in folder now, and our GWS is right here. Okay, so there's a few things that we want to do. One thing that we want to do is we want to go through our data table and set up all the guns that we're going to have. At least we want to set up one for now, but you can set them all up as you wish. And another thing that we want to do is, in this particular case, we're going to include the pickup logic from the gun weapon system into this new project. If you have your own, there's one piece that you have to implement to make it work with your own pickup logic, and I'll show you where that is when we get to it. Where your guns are located, under the structs and data folder, under data tables, just open that up. And you can see the various guns that are here by default as an example, but you don't have to use any of these. You can delete all of these and create new ones here. We're just going to use the M4 rifle as an example. Okay, and just the defaults that are already here. Okay, so we're going to use the M4 as our gun. And right now we don't even have a gun because it's just the template. So there's a few demo guns that would have come over from the project. So we have the grenade launcher, the M4, and so on and so on. If you have your own guns, this is how you would migrate the gun weapon system to your gun. Okay, so let's say you have your own M4. Okay, so this M4 that I have here is actually just a child actor of my main gun parent. Okay, so all my guns fall under this gun parent. So I don't need to create the same logic a million times for all the guns that are sharing the same logic, for instance, like reload or whatever. So I don't know how you have your system set up. It depends on how it is. You might have to manually add the gun weapon system to each gun. But generally speaking, you're going to have a parent gun, which looks like this, and all the guns underneath it that have the same logic, like shooting and has a muzzle and all that kind of stuff. You're going to have child actors underneath that. So best thing to do is go into your parent and just add the gun weapon system blueprint as a child actor under your mesh. Okay, that's the simplest way to do it, and make sure it's under the muzzle socket. If you don't have a muzzle socket, go into the skeleton and just create one. If you don't know how to do that, I'll show you right now. This is the skeleton here, right? Just find the root here, click on that, and add socket. Okay, and then just move it to where the muzzle would be. I like to move it slightly out from the muzzle just because if you have collision there, sometimes it'll block your shots or whatever. Dragging and dropping works. So if you go into the snap-in parts here, where it says GWS gun, that's the part you want to add to your gun. So you just drag it to your gun, drag it onto the mesh, and boom, it's in there. Okay, and then choose muzzle. And you'll see it'll line it up with the muzzle there. We don't need two, so I'm going to delete one, but that's all you got to do. Once it's in there, it's in there. Okay, and then go to your actual M4, and then click on that. And on the right side here, we want to set it to M4. So right now it just has the default gun, which is, well, it's M4, but it could be a grenade launcher or a pistol or whatever. In this particular case, it's the M4, so save it. And now this particular gun knows to pull all of the variables from that data table for the M4. So the bullet speed, all that kind of stuff. So don't consider this really the actual item itself, because the item itself is handled probably somewhere else. This is the firing rate and the reload speed and all that kind of stuff, and all the bullet parameters and types of bullets it fires and what kind of damage it does. So it's all the bullet parameters and the weapon parameters, but think of it however you want. Okay, so if I take the demo gun, the M4, and I put it on the map here, what's going to happen when I run over that? Nothing. And the reason nothing's going to happen is because we haven't told a character to actually interact with that gun at all. And this is where your system might be different from what we're doing here. If you already have your own pickup logic, then as soon as you hit pickup, it's going to pick up like your logic would normally pick up. So you don't have to worry about that at all. But because the TPS template doesn't have any pickup logic, we're going to have to add that. So that's why in the snap-in parts here, we have some optional components. And the optional one that we add here is the character one. Okay, so if we take our character and we open the blueprint up for that, we're going to add it to our character's mesh. I drag that over, drop it in the mesh, and you see it added there. Just leave that. So now that that's there, and you see there's a little overlap on the bottom there, and that's what we want. So that's going to overlap the gun. You can kind of move that if you really want to. And we overlap it, and I hit F. Okay, it's saying that it can't find the socket that it needs to attach to. So if we look at our character, we look at the skeleton for our mesh, which is here. These are all the sockets. If we go to our data table, what socket is it trying to attach to? Rifle, right? So there's no rifle socket on our skeleton. And because there's no animations for this, I'm actually just going to add it to his chest, just so it's facing forward. Let's go with, yeah, spine 2 is good. You'd probably want to add this to your hand, though. But because you don't have any rifle animations, it's just going to be facing straight to the ground. So rifle, save. Let's try that again. Cool. So exactly what I was hoping for. Just to make this look a little better, but not really at all. Just going to add the rifle and just rotate it so it's facing forward. There we go. That looks better, right? Chest rifle, man. There we go. Perfect. And actually, when I pick that up and I try to shoot, you can see it already works. The shoot. I didn't even add a shoot input because you don't actually need to use that in the character. It's part of the gun. So it says I need to reload because I don't have any ammo. So the next piece we want is ammo. Obviously, we don't have any ammo. So you probably also have your own ammo system. And if you do, then we can handle that as well, but we'll take a look at that a little bit later. What we're going to do right now, though, is just add some ammo for, just add some ammo that we have built into the system here. So under optional again, where it says GWS ammo, we're just going to drag one of these out, and I'm going to make it 5.56 ammo, because that's what this gun takes. Let's just see if I can pick that up. Yep, pick that up. See if I can reload. So I can fire now. Okay, so that's working. I was able to pick that up. I was able to reload. Okay, so that's our basic pickup and ammo system that we just added there. The next thing we're going to do is, if you have your own ammo system or if you have your own pickup logic, there's two pieces that you need to do in order to make the system work right. So we can use this get GWS actor by gun. So that would be self, pop that in there, and that's there. And if you're already in the gun, technically you could do this, and you could get child, actor, and then child, GWS gun. You could do it this way as well, if you know how to do that, but it's already done in there for you if you don't have that already. And also, if you're calling this from your player, then you could just pipe the actual gun into here. Then you can call this from the player as well, instead of calling from the gun. It depends on where you do your pickup, but wherever you're doing your pickup, so let's say it's in here in the gun, picked up. All right, put that in there. We're saying that's a pickup. And if you're not using the gun weapon system attach, meaning you're doing your own attach system, just uncheck that. And what that's going to do is just going to set ownership of this child actor to your pawn. So that way we own the pawn and we can make changes on it. Or sorry, we own the child actor so we can make changes on it. Okay, so you just need to make sure you include this in your logic when you're picking up a gun or if you're dropping a gun. Okay, so if you're dropping a gun, you want to do the same thing, except that would be false. Okay, and if you have a holstering system where you're putting a gun on your back or something like that, then do the same thing, but this time go holster and leave everything else blank. Okay, the difference between holster and drop is you still own the gun, which means nobody else can pick it up because it's still owned by you. It's just not the one that's in your hand. So when you shoot, it's not going to fire this gun because it's holstered. Okay, so it's just those three things you need to add. And it's the same thing to add 3 times, just different check marks. Okay, so put that in your own pickup and drop logic and holster. If you look in the images, the version help images, this is for the snap and inventory system, but you can see it's the same logic that I was just showing you there. Okay. So that's if you have your own custom pickup and drop logic. That's what you need to add in the system is your ammo, your getting ammo, or if you have ammo to shoot. So if we go to the GWS gun actor here, we go to shot ammo. Well, that stuff is fine. If you scroll down to where it says reload, okay, which right now is bound to R, anything in all the stuff that's in blue here, you need to replace with your own ammo. Like, so how do you get your own ammo stuff? Right now, this is using the built-in ammo. So this little ammo box that I dropped over here. It's the demo system and picking up ammo and adding it to your character. Yeah, it's all done in the GWS character, which is optional. Alright, so I'm picking up ammo and I'm just storing it in an array, essentially. Okay, so you don't need to use this system if you have your own ammo system, or if you're using like an inventory system or snap in inventory, then you don't want to use any of this. You want to go into the GWS gun and replace this stuff in blue with your own ammo system. Okay, so then what you would end up doing is, let's read the stuff here. So like you're saying, how much ammo do I have of that type? Pipe that into there so we can see how much ammo we have. And this right here is, do I even have ammo? If I don't, then just exit. If I do, then you want to carry on with the logic. So you want to remove the ammo from your current system somehow. So you want to put that in here. That wouldn't be here. Okay, and then you can just exit out. So you want to set the clip on here, but everything in blue you'd replace because that's part of this current system. If you need kind of an example of how that would look, the reason I can't help you too much more with this in this video is because I don't know how your ammo system's set up. So I would have no idea how to tell you how to decrease your ammo here. What you don't have to worry about is loading your clip or anything like that. The gun portion will handle on its own. It's more your stockpile of ammo. If I have 500 shots for 9mm and I just reloaded a 9mm handgun that takes 15 shots, I now have to take 15 away from my stockpile, and that's what you're trying to do here. Okay, so that's the only thing we're using this for, is when we reload, we want to take the gun or the ammo away from our stockpile, and that's how you have to fit this in. And also when we reload, we want to make sure that we even have ammo to reload with, and if we don't, then we don't load any ammo into the gun. Right, so that's what you're doing here. You're checking to see if you have ammo. If you do, take away the ammo that you need to reload with, and so on. All the other math is done here, so we check if the gun is empty. If it's not empty, we're only going to load the amount of ammo that we need to load. And outside here, you're going to take this and say, remove the ammo, right? Remove used ammo. So this is how you would decrease it from your current ammo supply. If you want some examples of how that works, if you go into the help folder again under images, under snap in inventory, you can take a look at the reload check here, 1 and 2. So this is how it was done for the snap and inventory system. So all that blue stuff is gone, and this is what I had to add for that system. Okay, so how you do it might be a little different for your system. If you need help with it, feel free to message me on Discord. But these are the two pieces that I need to change for the snap and inventory system to work. Okay, it's pretty simple, but if you've never seen it before, then obviously you need to understand that. Other than that, everything else is taken care of, but you just need to figure out how we check how much ammo we have, and then decrease the ammo if we did have some and we removed it from the stockpile and put it in the gun. Okay. Otherwise, the clip and whatever's currently in the gun is all handled in this system here. You don't have to worry about that. Okay, so once that's done, okay, so we want to keep our character open. So the next part we want to do is figure out how we're going to make our character take damage. If you already have your own system for damage taking, you might want to just ignore that one or get rid of it and just use this current one. This is only going to cover the system that comes with the GWS system. So if you have your own system, you're going to have to figure out how to integrate that if you want to use your own damage system. Otherwise, I would suggest using this one. It's pretty simple, straightforward, easy to expand upon, and you can add this damage system that comes with this one to any actor that you want, not necessarily a character. So if you have a turret that you want to shoot, you can add it to that. I would recommend using the system that comes with GWS. The way we add that is if you go back to our snap-in folder here, under the snap-in common up here, the blueprints common, under the original snap-in folder. So it's not part of the GWS system because it's in some of the other snap-in systems as well. You're going to see this BPSI health and damage. That's the actor that we want to add to our character. So just grab that, and as usual, just add it to the mesh. Okay, and now we have our health and damage here. And there's a few settings that you can modify here if you want. So when the character dies, do you want him to ragdoll? If you do want him to ragdoll, after how many seconds? So if you want it to play like a dying animation first and then ragdoll once he's on the ground, just how many seconds is that dying animation? And this check mark here is only GWS explosions do radial damage. So if the explosion was caused by a GWS rocket launcher or grenade launcher, then it'll cause damage. If it was caused by a grenade in some other system, then it won't. If that's true. If that's false, then all radial damage will be handled and will be accounted for. And just to show you briefly what that looks like, the health and damage system, we go take a look at it. It's a very simple actor blueprint. Okay, this is all it looks like right here. Is a couple little macros, so decrease health, set the ragdoll, and that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's the only things that are in here. So if you wanted to add things to this, you're more than welcome to do that. But if you want to need the bone, hit, so hit to the head, headshots, and arm shots, and all that kind of stuff, you want any of that stuff to work, you have to use this damage system here. Okay, so you can add to this, but all of the damage stuff is going to be pre-calculated, and it's going to look for this particular child actor in your character when it hits them. Okay, so you want to make sure that this definitely exists on your character if you want to use the damage system. Okay. The only other thing that you need to do here, unfortunately, I couldn't figure out how to get this to work default in the engine. Where it says event radial damage, even though this is part of your character, it doesn't do anything while it's in here, which is really annoying because I should just be able to handle this here. But unfortunately it didn't work, so you have to actually add this to your character in order for radial damage to work. Okay, so I included it here as an example. You can literally just copy this, go to your character, put it wherever you want. Just gonna put it right here in the event graph. And where it says health and damage, grab that, type it into there, and literally just connect this up. Okay, and that'll work. So radial damage will work there from that point on. Okay, so once you've done that, close this, and we can close this. Let's go back down to our GWS blueprints, and let's go into the projectiles folder. And let's take a look at the projectiles here and how these work. So we have our main projectile, and then we have our bouncy, explodey projectile, and this radial force component. You don't have to ever actually call this directly. This is called by the explosions. Okay. So if we take a look at our projectile, we basically just have this little egg-shaped thing that kind of glows. This is the projectile mesh. You can use this, you can customize it if you want to, but for bullets, I'd recommend just leaving it the way it is. You can set the color in the data table, so green, blue, purple, whatever you want, but I'd recommend leaving the actual shape of it or whatever, because for machine guns and bullets, they're going to travel so fast, you might see like a quick flash, but you're not actually going to see the projectile itself. But you're more than welcome to replace the projectile if you want to. That little ball that you see inside it, right there, the yellow ball there, that's the hit point collision. So that's the actual size of the bullet. And that's customizable as well in the data table. You don't want to edit anything in here. Don't touch anything in this blueprint at all. But I'm just giving you an introduction of how it looks. So basically when you shoot a bullet, this thing's going to get generated and it's going to fire, and this part's not going to do any damage, it's just for looks, but the collision part is that little ball right there. And you can make that really big, like the size of a fist or whatever. You can change that in the data table. Like I said, you can add different projectile. If you're using something like a rocket or a grenade, you're going to want to use a different projectile there for that. Over here on the left where it says whiz sound collision, you can specify the sound that the player is going to hear when this overlaps them. So if this bullet's traveling through the air and 300 feet away it flies by another character, you can have a sound play for that other character. So it can be like a sound or whatever you want to call it, like a whiz sound. I didn't know what else to call it other than whiz sound collision. So it's optional. You don't have to use it, but it's there if you want to scare people that they almost got shot or whatever. Quick intro to how the shot projectile works. If you look at the bouncy projectile, a little simpler, a little different though. If we look at this, it's just a ball right now, this projectile. There's nothing else in here other than the hit point, and the hit point is the same size as the ball. So this is either your rocket, your grenade launcher, or any other kind of crazy things you can think of. Again, you don't want to edit anything in here. It's all done through the data table, so don't change anything in here. Okay, just know that if you want to spawn something that's a bouncy or explodey, it's going to spawn this projectile and not the other one. It only does damage on the explosion, whereas this one does damage on impact. So the next thing I want to talk about are the surface types, right? So you can have metal, flesh, wood, concrete, and so on and so on. The way the surface types work are very, very simple. If we go into our data table here, and we open up the guns, you can see we have our M4. If we go down to the left here where it says bullet parameters, open that up, and scroll down a little bit more, see where it says surface impacts. This is where we add the different impacts that this bullet can impact or can interact with, and the difference here. So you always want to have a default, so if you forget to set them up, at least it'll always, on the first impact, result in the default here, which penetration is 0, damage reduction on penetration, all this stuff is 0. So nothing's going to happen other than whatever effect you've assigned for the default. So it can just be like some generic, white flakes that fly through the air or something like that. Okay, but you can add, obviously, wood and metal and concrete and so on. So how does this work? Well, these are just a simple enumerator, so you can just update this, right? So if we go into our enum, we have surface types. So just add as many surface types as you want. Okay, add them all right here. And then once you've added them, if you go into the data table, right here beside array elements, just hit the plus symbol. It'll add an additional one, and you just choose what you've added there. Do a real world example of this. Here, and we say plasterboard. Depends on how detailed you want to get with your impacts, but under here we can just choose plasterboard. Right, and we'd want to have an effect for plasterboard, which we don't have right now. And we can say how many times can the M4 bullet penetrate plasterboard. Well, plasterboard's pretty weak, so we can say maybe 6 times it'll go through. Every single time it goes through, how much reduction do we want to do on that from the original damage that it was going to do? So if the damage for this bullet is 25, every single time it hits a piece of plasterboard and goes through it, how much do we want to decrease that damage by? Right, so we can say 10% of 25 is every time it goes through. So the second time it hits, third time it hits, fourth time it hits, it's going to take another 10% off whatever its current damage is. Okay, if we want to make it ricochet, so if you want to see just like an effect pop off from the thing, you can set that to yes or no. It's only if it's the last hit though. So if the 6th hit, we know it can't go through again, so it's going to ping off the plasterboard. Normally a bullet wouldn't ping off plasterboard; it'd probably get lodged in it. So you probably wouldn't want that for plasterboard, but if you had metal, then it would probably want to ping off that. So penetration slowdown. How much slower is the projectile going to get every single time it passes through this surface type? So if it goes through the first set of plasterboard and it's traveling at 100 feet per second, how much do you want to slow that down? So if you say 10%, then the next time it's going at 90 feet per second. And then if it goes through 6 more of those, by the time it gets to the end, it's traveling at 40% its original speed. And that brings us to our last one, is what's the minimum speed it takes to penetrate. So if it's going at 40% its original speed now, and it hits a piece of wood, well, the wood's probably going to require it be traveling faster than 40% to penetrate, which means that even though the penetration of the wood is 3 or 4 or 2, it's going to get stopped on the first one because it's not traveling fast enough anymore to go through that, right? So that's how we handle going through multiple surface types in a single shot. That's how you set it up on the gun, on the weapon system side. In order to register the hit on the other side, you have to just use the tag system, okay, that's built into the engine. So whatever these names are here in this enumerator, this is the exact tag that you want to add to anything that needs to get hit. So if you recall earlier, we added the flesh tag to our character's mesh because when the mesh gets hit, we want it to register a flesh hit. Alright, so if we type tag, you're going to see player mesh, right? That's the one we added to find the mesh, and then flesh. So if it contains flesh, it's going to spawn blood, right? And it's going to penetrate however many times you specified in the data table that flesh can be penetrated, right? So that works both for actors or for components, right? So if the actor itself has a tag, it'll look for that as well. Okay. Right now we're using the component on the character because we don't want it to hit the actor and check for anything. We want it to hit the actual mesh of the character. But if we look at, say this block here, it's just a component. So if we go over here and we go tag, right, we can add a component tag, or we can add an actor tag, right? So we can say metal. And by adding the word metal there, that now becomes an impactable thing from our bullet. And also just remember that anything that we want to shoot, that we want to register a hit, it has to generate overlap events. Okay, so if you're shooting something and it's not hitting, it's because you're not generating overlap events on that thing. Okay. So we pick up our chest gun, some bullets, reload. I don't have a crosshair, so it's going to be hard to aim here, but I'm just going to stand in front of this thing. There we go, we can see it. The bullets bouncing off there. We'll shoot something we haven't set up. Not gonna register. So that is actually how it all works. So we've done adding the gun weapon system to the guns themselves. We set up optional pickup and drop logic on the character. And the ammo box here is included, but completely optional. You probably have your own ammo, your own inventory, all that kind of stuff, so we don't have to worry about that. But we did show how to add the ammo logic that we need to reload, if we need to reload. So if you have your own ammo system, you're going to need to use that. And when you pick up a gun, if you have your own gun system, your own pickup system, you need to add the portion that sets the ownership of the GWS item. So we covered that as well. The other thing we covered was adding the health and damage actor to your character's mesh. And we covered how to set up a new surface type for impacts, right, and where to modify those in each type of gun or each type of bullet we have for those. And we set up how to determine when we do shoot something, how this system registers whether or not that thing that we hit is shootable. So we generate overlap events and we make sure it contains a tag for impact. Again, if it doesn't contain any tag for impact, but it's generating overlap events and we register the hit, it will always use the default. So a couple more things we're going to cover here. The health and damage. So we set up the character to be able to receive damage from shots or explosions and that kind of thing. But how do we say how much damage each bullet does and to what part of the body? Very simple. Exactly the same way we did the surface types. We're going to do that with the shots as well, the bone hits. So if we just minimize that and scroll down a little further, at the very bottom here, we have where it says hit bone damage parameters. So if we change our M4, open that up, for each one, you can add as many of these as you want. Okay, you can add one for every single bone in the body if you really want to. So the first one is just a description. So what are you calling it? The head. Okay. If you want it to be a random damage between two different floats, you can set the min and set the max. It'll be random between these two. If you set them to the same thing, then it won't be random, obviously. Okay, and then critical chance. If you want a critical chance there, put a check mark there, and then the percent that each shot has to be a critical chance. So 2% chance it'll add an additional 50 damage, right? So 2% of the time, no matter what, you're going to kill the person, regardless of what happens, right? With the M4, if you shoot them in the head, you're going to kill them 2% of the time in this case. Because the minimum damage is 50, maximum is 50. If they have 100 damage, they're dead. Okay. Now we want to determine which bones are affected by these parameters, and that's where the boneless comes in. So I have set just the head and the neck 01, so the neck and the head, the upper part of the neck and the head are affected by these parameters here. In this particular case, I wanted to specify the head and neck. I wanted to call those out. But if you look at the next one here, I just chose the left arm and I wrote parent only in brackets. And the reason I did that was because instead of putting, the clavicle underscore L and then hand underscore L and then pinky 01 under L, whatever, that's a lot of bones to have to sit here and manually put in under the bone list. So instead, if you just put the clavicle L, everything that's below that, if it's not found, will automatically be covered under here. So if you shoot somebody in the pinky finger and you don't have a pinky finger bone specified somewhere else for different damage, it's going to fall under its parent damage. So it's going to fall under the clavicle L. So if you see somebody in the pinky, they're going to take between 5 and 15 damage and no critical chance for a pinky shot. But if you shoot them in the upper arm, they're also going to take between 5 and 15 damage. So this just lets you be as lazy as you want or as detailed as you want. So you can literally specify every single finger if you want. Just add a whole bunch more of these and specify every finger. Okay, and that's really all you need to do in order to set up bones and hits for damage. So if you have something that's not a player, like say a turret, just make sure that it's a skeletal mesh, and instead of using head, you could just use like, upper gun or something like that, or left side, whatever, or base of turret, whatever the actual sockets are called or the bones are called. You can specify those here, and it'll find them on the mesh. Okay, and that's why we add the health and damage thing to the mesh. Okay, for the impact effects, we also have a system for that. So if we go back into our bullet parameters here. Okay, so next we'll talk about the effects. So we have impact effects, we have shot effects, so what comes out of the muzzle when you shoot the gun, sounds, and obviously particle effects and that kind of thing. Okay, so if we go back into our data table, you can see for the M4, if we scroll down a little bit here, with the gun type, obviously we have the rifle. This is just for animations usually, but you can use this. A lot of rifles use the same animations. Pistols use different, SMGs sometimes use different animations. So that's kind of a convenience thing for you to have there. But if we go down, you'll see where it says muzzle and sound effects. And we can specify an actor to spawn. So we're not specifying a particle to spawn, we're specifying an actor. So this actor will contain both the particle effect as well as the sound that the gun was going to make. Okay, and we'll look at that in 1 second, but that's where you would specify the muzzle sound. And if you scroll further down where we look under the surface types, so the surface impacts, if we open that up, each surface type also has an effect here, but this is the impact effect, so this would be for wood, because this is wood. You'd say what effect you want to spawn for wood, and you say that one there, impact wood, impact metal, and so on and so on. And you're probably thinking, but I don't know how to create those, right? Well, included in this is not how to create impact effects. However, there are a few here, like I created one using just a steam effect. I just turned it red for flesh, but there's also a metal one and a wood one that's included. So this is just sparks and this is wood. Obviously, you probably have 1,000 impact effects you bought off the marketplace or you created on your own, and you can use those just fine. And same with the muzzle effects. You can use your own muzzle effects as well. All you need to do though is just use the template that I've set here, and you can create your own effects. And I'll show you how that works. So if we just locate that actor here under effects, there is a base parent, so you can just create a child of this. Generally what you want to do is go for like. So wood and metal, impacts, those are going to be pretty similar. So if you just right click and you duplicate it, and you can go to the end, just rename it to, well, we used plasterboard earlier, so I'll just use that again. Then you open that up. Okay, and then over here under edit these, under snap in, edit these. This is where you can say how big you want the particle to be. Okay, so if it's a big particle, you can make that bigger, smaller, however you want. How long do you want the particle to last? 1 second, half a second, 10 seconds. And this is where you specify the actual particle itself. What sound will it make when it impacts, or when this is played? So this could be a muzzle shot, so this could be a pistol blast or whatever. The attenuation, so how far can it be heard? I just have 3 defaults here: large, medium, and small gun. You can create your own or not use any. And how loud do you want the sound to be? Okay, so this is what you're going to use for spawning the effects. I like doing it this way, that way you don't have to worry about killing the emitters or anything like that after they're done playing. You can just set the actor's lifespan here, and it'll automatically kill everything that's involved with that particle, so it's not sitting around in your game forever. And you can also just do it all in one place. You don't have to spawn a sound, spawn a particle, change the whatever. It's all just done right here. So you just spawn this one actor and it's all in there. If you want to see what it looks like when you're creating these or playing with them, you can just actually go into the full blueprint editor. If you go to viewport, you can see what it'll look like every time you compile it. It'll play. So you can, over here, all the variables. So like I said, if I change that to 5, 5, 5, that's going to be a really large wood blast that you're going to see when that plays. So large that you have to zoom out to see the wood. Okay, that is how you create the effects, and then once you've created them, just specify them for each gun. Okay, so we're almost done here. The last things I'm going to talk about are just the various settings that we haven't gone over yet that are part of the gun weapon system, and just the widget stuff, so like the UI stuff. So if you have your own equip and pick up logic and that kind of stuff, what you're probably going to do here is get your pawn and then cast to player, whatever it is, TPS, third person character, cast your player, all right, and then get your gun, equipped gun, whatever your variable is for your equipped gun. I won't know what that is, so I can't build it into the system by itself. But once you have your equipped gun, then you can get your GWS, right? You can cast. But for you, obviously, what you're going to want to do here is get your equipped gun from your character, directly, or however you're equipping things, and then get your GWS component from the gun, and then you can get the clip from that. If you need some examples on that, you can take a look at the images in here again for the snap-in inventory system. Under the widget, you can see how I've done it here. All right, so I just have a pure function in my character itself that gives me my gun. And then for my gun, I can search for my child actor in the widget, because that's included, and get the GWS gun. Okay, so it depends on how you're doing your equipment stuff. So I was able to call it directly from my player character in the snap-in inventory system because I have this get equipped gun function. But if you don't have that, then you might have to call it directly from your character. If you might just call the variable directly and get the currently equipped gun, search for the child actor called GWS gun, and that gives it to you right there. This is part of the handy macro system here, so you can see that'll be available in your project once you've added this, and you can get the clip that way. Okay. If you need any help with that, just feel free to message me in the Discord channel, but it's pretty straightforward. Okay, so the last thing that I'm going to talk about is all of these variables here. So if you're not sleeping yet, you will be. So I'm just going to go through each of these things that we haven't talked about yet, and just explain what they are and what how they're useful and that kind of thing. So the very first one I'm going to look at here, though, before we jump into the rest of them, is the traces projectiles one. Again, as I mentioned at the very, very beginning, you can either use traces or projectiles for any gun. Right now this is set to projectiles. If I just flick that on and turn it to traces, what you're going to see is traces. still get our sound effect. It all still works the same way. The only difference is traces don't have any gravity, so the bullets won't fall off over time. One unique thing about traces, though, is you can set a delay for when the shot is registered, so that they don't have gravity, so you don't have to worry about any fall off or anything like that, so they're more instant. However, there is a shot speed that we can play with down here. Okay, so the way that works is if you're shooting with a ray trace or a line trace, and let's say the shot has an effective range of 50 feet, right? So let's say this is 100 feet here, and you shoot from this side over here to that wall. What's going to happen is we're going to do a quick trace before we do the key one, the actual shot, and we're going to see if that shot's going to hit anything within 20% of its maximum range. Okay, so if this is 100 feet and that's the maximum range of the shot, we're going to do a trace to about here and say, okay, did I hit anything? If I didn't, then we're actually going to delay the trace. So it's not going to be instant, so you're not going to register that shot right away. So technically what will happen is if the player is, for example, let's say you're running, you're sidestepping this way, firing that way. If you're not hitting anything, by the time you get to about here, that's when your first shot's going to actually hit. Okay, so it's not going to fire from where the player is after they're running. It's going to fire from whenever they fired their shot, but it's going to be delayed by however many seconds you specify in the speed here. So if you say 0, it's going to be instant all the time. But if you say 0.5, what's going to happen is the person is going to shoot. If they don't hit anything within this range here, then it's going to go 0.5, then launch the trace. And that's just a way of simulating distance, right? So if you shoot something, I use a really short example here, which is 100 feet, so that's not going to really make sense. But if you're using, let's say, 1,000 feet, and you fire a sniper rifle 1,000 feet, well, it's not actually going to hit the 1,000-foot mark instantly. It's going to probably take, a fraction of a second or maybe even a second. It depends on what the gun is. So that's the way of kind of simulating that. So it's 20%. So if it's 1,000 feet, right, you're going to look at if it doesn't hit anything for 200 feet, then it's going to implement that delay. If it does hit something, if it knows it's going to hit something before then it's instant. So it's always 20% of the full length of the shot, the range. Okay, so you can practice with that a little bit. Just put a wall somewhere and shoot at it with a projectile bullet, and you'll see what I mean. It's really cool the way it's set up because you can simulate delays but still use traces. There's no gravity fall off, but at least if somebody's running and you're shooting at them, you're not always going to be perfect with that shot because in real life, the shot's not actually instant. It's fast, but it's not instant. Okay, so that's the one thing I just want to talk about for traces, which isn't completely straightforward when you're reading this, so I just wanted to explain that. And the VR, non-VR. If you're using the system in VR and you're adding the gun weapon system to your guns, everything works exactly the same way, but the difference is that if you have this checked off here, what's going to happen is instead of the shot coming from your camera, right, which is to the center of the screen, it's going to come from the muzzle of the gun and shoot outwards. Right, because you can have a gun in each hand, you can be firing in different directions. You obviously wouldn't want the gun's fire to go directly at the screen. This is VR, so the bullet's actually going to come from the muzzle of the gun and go outwards in a straight line, as opposed to from the center of the screen. Okay, so it's important if you're using this in VR to take that off, so it works in VR. Okay, and then what's good on the line here? So muzzle sound effect. So that's what we talked about, just a pistol shot sound. If it's a grenade launcher, you can choose different sounds. I just have the same sound for most of these except for the rocket. Base clip size. So what can the gun hold as a base clip? So 20. Extended clip size. So this is just to make life easier for you if you have an extended mag on your gun, for example. Then when you're calling for ammo in your reload function, I can actually show you here. All right, we're going to say here, do you have an extended mag? Right, so you're going to need to, from whatever way you're equipping your gun. So you can pull from your equipped gun and check if it has an extended mag, and if it does, then just pipe that into there. Right, so however you check for extended mags, however you do your attachments. If you want an example of that, again, you can always check the the images here for the snap and inventory system. We do have so we have our own check here for in the snap and inventory system. So this is just a built-in function of that. But are we using, or does the current weapon that we have equipped have an extended mag, right? And that's a bool. So if it does, right, that's what I have going into here. Then we're going to pick A, right, which is the extended clip size, right? So that's how you would use that. You don't have to use that. If you want to do it some other way, you can, but that's just there, so you can specify it all in this one data table. Okay, same with the reload base. So you can, if you have like a certain type of equipment modifier that makes your reload reduction time happen, and you can hook that up here. Okay. Recoil base intensity. So it's just 1 to 20. You can play around with this. So however much recoil the gun's going to have when you fire a shot. So that's you know, the gun goes up when you shoot it. Recoil reduction, and again, if you have some kind of a grip or something that reduces it, it'll reduce it by this amount. Reload base. So how long does it take to reload? This should probably be in line with your animation. And the reload reduction time, so same thing. How much time do we take off? So 2.167 minus 0.3, obviously make sure your animation's going to align with that. Time between shots, so if you're going to sit there and spam the fire button, if you fire the gun, how long do you have to wait before you can fire it again, right? Obviously you don't want someone to sit there and spam and fire 1,000 bullets a second. That doesn't make sense. And obviously an M4, they can probably fire multiple shots per second by clicking, so just set that up to however you want. Rocket launcher or grenade launcher, you probably want to space that out to like 2 or 3 seconds so they can't fire a million rockets at once. Max shots per second. So this is important because it determines your auto and burst fire rate. So if you hold the mouse button down and you have an auto mode, it's going to continuously fire. This is how many shots it's going to fire per second. So if I'm holding the button down, it's going to fire 11 shots per second. Okay, so you want to set that up accordingly, 3 shots per second, 4 shots, however you want to do that. Okay, so play with that a little bit and you can figure out how you like that. For each gun, supported fire types. So this is just an enumerator as well. This is in the common enums. So if you go to the blueprints, common enums, you can see fire types. Single, burst, auto. If you have any other logic you want to build in, you can go ahead and do that. For the pistol, for example, I only have burst and single, so that's the only 2 modes it'll allow me to switch to. If I hit B, for the M4, it has single, burst, and auto. So bullet parameters, these are specific to the bullets. Again, the bullet collision size, so that little part that actually is going to hit the player, a little circle, and you can make that big or small. If you have a custom mesh, you can customize the mesh size here. Very important, if you don't have a custom mesh, leave the zeros. Or if you don't want to make the mesh look bigger, leave this to zeros. The effective range, so how far the bullet can travel, and this is in feet, so 500 feet, 400 feet, 300 feet. So what's going to happen when it hits that 500 foot mark is it's going to start applying gravity. Okay, so this is where you're going to add your gravity to the bullets. 1 is very high gravity, so essentially as soon as it hits 500 feet, you're going to see it drop like a brick. So you probably want to make this to like 0.05 if you want some realistic, even maybe 0.005 if you want some realistic gravity, because it's gonna be firing pretty fast. The hard part of testing this is if you have a bullet, running at 2,000 feet per second, it's really hard to see it unless you slow the engine down to see the gravity fall off. So you can set this to 1 foot per second, and then set the gravity a little bit and try to play with those settings and see kind of how much gravity you're gonna have to fall off there. Okay, but that definitely works. It just takes a little bit of getting used to figure out the gravity versus the fall off versus the speed. Base damage, so how much damage is this going to start with? Is it going to do minimum? So base damage will be whatever you want this bullet to do no matter what. And then on top of that, what bone is it going to hit and how much damage does it do to the bone? So if you want to just use the bone damage, then you want to set this to 0. Otherwise, if you want to have a base damage of 10 and you have your arm damage of 15 or whatever, that's going to be 10 plus 15 is 25, so that's how much damage it's going to do. So here we have a base damage of 25. This also determines the explosion damage of explosive projectiles. Okay, so custom projectile mesh if you want to. Again, like I said, you probably don't want to change this because there's not really any reason to. The bullets travel so fast, you don't need to worry about that. But for something like a grenade launcher or a rocket launcher, you might want to have your own mesh for that. Projectile glow color, pretty straightforward. Surface impacts, we talked about these, so you can add as many impacts types as you want. The effects, how many times you can penetrate that surface type, how much damage does it reduce, does it ricochet, does it slow down, and so on. There's a part earlier in the video, if you happen to skip to this part of the video, there's a part earlier in the video that shows the surface types. So look for the surface types section if you want to get more details on what these do. Okay, so the bounces or explodes. So this is where you want a grenade or a rocket launcher. You want to turn that on, and now these become active. So you can see how many bounces do we want to do before it stops bouncing or it's dead. So basically this is our fall off, our gravity. So if it bounces 3 times, it's going to stop bouncing after this many bounces. If you have this checked off, it'll actually explode on the last bounce. So it'll go bang, bang, and then okay, if it has 3. So if you don't have that checked off, it'll just start rolling around. It won't bounce anymore. This is whether or not you want it to explode after a certain amount of seconds. So even if, so let's say you specify 8 bounces, but it only did 4 because the room you're in is really big, it'll still explode after this amount of seconds. If this is 0, it'll never explode. Okay, so the radial damage range, so how far in a radius should the damage expand out for? So 100 feet, for example. And do you want it to have fall off? So if you're 80 feet away from the explosion point, do you only take 8 damage or something like that, or 80 damage instead of the full 1,000 or whatever you specified the base damage to be? If false, then it's full damage for everywhere. The explosion effect that you want it to have. So again, just create an explosion effect like we talked about earlier and set it here. And this is the amount of bounciness that you want the projectile to have. So 0 to 1, 1 being super bouncy, 0 being no bouncy. Okay, so you can play with that as well. So the hit bone damage parameters, we talked about this earlier as well. So if you're interested in getting more details on how these work and what they do exactly and how this whole system works, just check earlier in the video for the health and damage section. We'll go through all that there. Don't need to do that again. And just the very last option here is attach to socket, and this is optional. This is only if you're using the attach system that comes with the GWS system. If you're not using it and you have your own attach logic, then this is irrelevant. You can leave it blank or just type whatever, but it won't be used. Okay, and that is everything in this system. A little more complicated than some of the other systems in that you have to integrate the ammo check as well as the pickup and drop ownership logic. So if you're using your own systems, you might have a little problems with that. If you do, just feel free to come into the Discord channel and ask some questions. It's pretty straightforward once you understand how to do it, but if you have any issues, just feel free to reach out and I'll give you a hand. Otherwise, good luck. Give me some feedback in the Discord. Let me know how it works for you, and we'll talk to you next time.